Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down again to talk about Cyberpunk 2077. It was just a couple of days ago we covered the massive update 1.6 that came to the game, alongside talking a bit about the Edgerunner anime, which is out right now. I cannot wait to get home and check this out. The Cyberpunk community has been really hyping this one up, so I'm really excited to dig into that. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, depending on your perspective with this news, we have a bit of a heartbreaker in today's video. Again, depending on how you look at it, and there are some circumstances which can lift things up and make it, honestly, a lot more of a positive outlook. We shall see, we shall discuss. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new here, you're into Cyberpunk 2077 and all updates on it, I've got you covered. With that, let us dive in. So for those who are wondering where all this information came from, a couple of days ago after update 1.6 had dropped, CD Projekt Red hosted an investors relations meeting. It's about an hour long. You can find it over on YouTube if you actually want to listen to the audio webcast yourself. However, a lot of websites have covered it and sort of did the Spark Notes version, and that's what I'm doing here for you as well. So IGN has the coverage here with the headline that says CD Projekt Red is fully committed to making more Cyberpunk in the future. Of course, this is something very encouraging to read given the fact that we just learned about Phantom Liberty, the first expansion for Cyberpunk 2077, and a long anticipated one that we've been itching to get details on, and of course one that has been pushed back a lot thanks to all the fixes the game had needed, plus COVID. It made it pretty complicated to get this one out the door. So CD Projekt Red has been fighting an uphill battle, and it feels like post next gen launch, they've really turned the corner. Now they're dropping last gen support. It just feels like we're taking a big step in the right direction already before any content has really truly been delivered on that level. So I'm very excited. However, this may be the only expansion we get for this game. So let's read. The quote is, "We've decided to develop one major expansion for Cyberpunk, which is going to take advantage of all of the capabilities of the new gen consoles," Nowakowski said. Having said that, we're fully committed to developing the Cyberpunk IP further beyond this particular Cyberpunk expansion. We've put a lot of effort and time into building this franchise, and we definitely want to continue to build upon what was built right now, with new stories, new experiences, new content, basically. Not just the video game format. In terms of expansions, there's just going to be one major expansion. However, there's going to be new stuff in the future. And the first thing I thought of right away was, well, sequel, right? And it makes so much sense because with the expansion being next-gen exclusive, then that's the perfect test bed for CD Projekt Red to see what does and doesn't work, what they are capable of doing with the Xbox Series X, with the PlayStation 5, with PC, as it should have been with the original Cyberpunk. But now with the expansion, it's a good way to test, figure things out, and then when you move on potentially to that next project, you kind of have a good idea of what you can and can't do, which is very helpful in game development, of course. Now, this may come across as a bit of a plot twist given that ahead of the game's launch in April of 2020, CD Projekt Red had said that Cyberpunk's DLC will be revealed before release with no less than The Witcher 3. Now, The Witcher 3 had 2 major expansions on top of 18 pieces of DLC. It was a really unique time, mind you, when CD Projekt Red had done that, as they consistently dropped free updates, and then they hit the ball out of the park with their expansions, with some of the best DLC work we have seen in our industry. This is a little bit different from what we saw with The Witcher 3. We're getting 1 major expansion versus 2, and depending on how you divvy it up, we are not getting as much DLC per se as we did with The Witcher 3. Now, if you include things like in an update 1.4, when we got the new jacket, the new car, we got a new weapon, we got another new jacket here with the Edgerunner update, a new gig, a new quest, CD Projekt Red has been drip feeding more tiny tidbits of content, and since the next gen launch, there have been little secrets buried within the newest updates that hide away things that aren't in the patch notes that CD Projekt Red encourages you to go and play and find out for yourself. Obviously, anything earth-shattering isn't going to be tucked away, but they do leave little nuggets out there for us to discover. So overall, they are delivering a lot of content. It just depends on what your perspective is. However, the tail of the tape here is they're doing 1 expansion, and just 1 expansion. My view on things here, given that they are opening to building more here, is that they will do more expansions if this does well. If it doesn't do well, they will likely move on to potentially a sequel or really hard focusing on The Witcher. The sad reality here is CD Projekt Red shot themselves in the foot with this game. It was going to be a megaton success, and by all accounts financially, this game is successful. It's just not nearly as successful as it should have been, and it's sunk the company's value, in turn making it an unsuccessful game. It's a really weird position that they've put themselves in, where again, this game could have been supported for years and they could have continued to build upon it, but now it doesn't seem like a smart business perspective given the sales trajectory that they were originally on thanks to pre-orders versus what they're on now after the launch was very broken. It's a dang shame because this game is so wonderful, but it seems like they're not giving up on the IP and they're going to build outwards. So that is a thing like what we're seeing with Edge Runner, which is out right now and looks fantastic. That also can mean things like board games, but one thing you do need to consider if we're looking at the video game space where I imagine most of us care is none other than the Molasses Flood. Now, given the style of game they've made, I have pinned them historically to do something with the Witcher franchise. But if this was the plan internally with CD Projekt Red, and it has been said that they are taking employees from CD Projekt Red and having them help out the Molasses Flood, and the Molasses Flood is now 3 times bigger than they originally were, with all of that accounted for, they are working on something pretty significant, and oh my gosh, would it be a real boon for this game if it ended up being another Cyberpunk spin-off of some kind. Whether you love it or hate it, I think you can admit to yourself, people love this world. It is rich and begging to be explored further. I just hope that they don't drop the first Cyberpunk game when it's really turning a corner finally and move on to a second game, which we likely won't see for a while since they're steadily building up for The Witcher 4. And you also have to keep in mind that they probably want a little bit of breathing space between now and the next Cyberpunk. Just given the fact that, you know, that first launch will always come up in people's heads when they think of anything CD Projekt Red launches, whether it be The Witcher, which I think people will be a little more forgiving of because CD Projekt Red really hasn't made a bad Witcher game. And I feel like, to me, it's the way I look at Bethesda Game Studios with the way they treat Elder Scrolls versus Fallout, where it's like, oh, you clearly do favor the Elder Scrolls franchise a lot more. Like, those releases are something special to you all, where Fallout is special, but it's just not as special. It's not yours. It's not your baby. You weren't as careful with it. And we see the results of that. That said, it may take a while to scale up for The Witcher 4. They are using Unreal Engine 5. This is a pretty significant deal, as that means CD Projekt Red is dropping Red Engine. What does that also mean for the future of Cyberpunk? Will the next Cyberpunk game use Unreal Engine 5? And I think that's an important question for us to ask, because as of this moment in time, we don't have any information on the future when it comes to technology with Cyberpunk 2077. The only thing we know is in CD Projekt Red's post announcing The Witcher 4 will use Unreal Engine 5 is that the Red Engine will be used to build Cyberpunk 2077's expansion Phantom Liberty. Now, of course, you have to consider 2 things with that. Number 1, how quickly does CD Projekt Red want to turn around a sequel for Cyberpunk 2077? A lot of assets were built for this game. I doubt they were all built for just a one-off. Also, a lot of the features, systems, tweaks, mechanics, all exist within the Red Engine. It's not just something you can drag and drop into another engine. I promise you, it is not that easy. So, of course, you want to consider the turnaround time, that being number 1, but number 2, arguably more important, is did the technical hiccups of Cyberpunk 2077 scare CD Projekt Red off of that engine to go work on Unreal Engine 5? And if that is the case and you had to rebuild from the ground up on Unreal Engine 5 with Cyberpunk 2077 sequel, it's going to take a while. However, I just can't sit here and feel like that's actually going to be the case, strictly because they are spending the time and the money to work within Red Engine with this expansion. They're going to have so much knowledge, so many assets ready to go to build a whole new world. I can't see them just dropping all of that and moving on to a new engine to rebuild all of that, because it's the first entry in what is effectively a new IP. To me, it doesn't make any business sense, but I'm not there in the boardroom. I don't know what's going on there. It's just my guess as a game developer from the outside looking in. It's a really good question to ask. And that does mean that possibly the next game from CD Projekt Red will take even longer. And if I really want to get wild with the speculation, because you can just tell when it's a team's first time working in an engine just on a technical level, there's going to be little hiccups all over the game. It's pretty common. Granted, CD Projekt Red's working with Epic, but I feel like the game that comes after The Witcher 4 within Unreal Engine 5 will benefit the most. So it'll be very interesting to see where they head with things. But as it stands now, one major expansion planned. They do want to expand further. And I do think maybe you could look at the Molasses Flood as a potential team making something within the Cyberpunk universe. You also have to keep in mind that CD Projekt Red kind of did, but kind of didn't shelve the original online component for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you just raised an eyebrow and said, how is something kind of canceled, but kind of not? Maddie, are you okay? We're getting deep in the video now. Allow me to explain, because it is a bit of a theory, but when you take a look at the exact quote from CD Projekt Group President Adam Kaczynski, and you consider the now known ripple in this story, which is that we have a announced partnership with Epic where they are working on Unreal Engine, they never said that the multiplayer component for Cyberpunk was canceled. In fact, the exact words were, "We're now switching our multiplayer activities from Red Engine to Unreal Engine. Having signed a licensing and partnership agreement with Epic, we gained access to multiplayer solutions available in Unreal Engine. So as a result, we abandoned further work on adding multiplayer features to Red Engine, and corresponding to date expenditures were reassigned from fixed assets to other operating expenses." That does not mean it's canceled. What that could mean is the Cyberpunk multiplayer is a standalone spin-off. You dovetail that back into the quote from the beginning of this video where they wanted to build the brand through other experiences. It's a separate game, not built on top of Cyberpunk 2077 because the player base is not as big as it should have been. And I think suddenly it makes a little bit more sense what they're doing here. So do keep in mind that this could be an option floating around still for more Cyberpunk content. So perhaps making that a big focal point again over at CD Projekt Red could be a wise investment for them. Although I think many of us just want to see the core experience be done right, because that's how spin-offs occur. You have this pillar that's almost like a tree that's very strong and sturdy, and then you have branches that come off of them that are nice and healthy because the core, the pillar, is stable, steady, and also in this case a strong representation of what a true Cyberpunk game is. What if a spin-off comes out from the Molasses Flood and it's way better, way more competent than anything CD Projekt Red could have worked on? I know a lot of people are going to sit there and scoff at that, but I think it's something we realistically need to consider, where the series isn't at its strongest yet for it to suddenly start branching out. It's not like we're with The Witcher where we're 3 games deep and they did Thronebreaker Witcher Tales, and that game was very different but also very awesome, where it was that moment of, hey, this is cool. It's not quite a Witcher game, but it has a lot of Witcher elements and it feels special. It's really good, so it doesn't take away from the main product. It only feeds off of it. That's just my mindset on things, but all in all, I don't want to sit here and spin my wheels for too long. I just think that this news can be a bit heartbreaking, knowing that the support for Cyberpunk 2077 can likely end by the time this expansion drops. That doesn't mean it's the end of Cyberpunk itself, but 2077, yeah, things may slow down, and that's just a business reality. When the game doesn't do as well as it could have, they're not going to sit on it as long as maybe something like Rockstar with GTA 5. The main reason they did is it kept selling copies over and over and over because of, again, the polish, the success, the popularity. It was all there for them. And I think that CD Projekt Red could have had the same thing. I can't emphasize, as much as I love this game, how foolish it was to do what they did. But I won't bore you with that. You've heard that type of talk time in, time out. Even as someone who loves the game, I just feel like this game could have been supported for years, but now we're looking at potentially Phantom Liberty being it. So that's all I have to say on today's news. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments down below. I'm certainly very excited to see your thoughts on what's going on with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 and their future. So please do fire away. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.